you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Hi, Commissioner Kim. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I tried to unmute, but it said the host would not let me, and now I'm allowed. So thank you.
Yeah, my colleague Mohima will go through sort of the standard operating procedures of our CB8 virtual committee meetings. But the thing you'll notice is that you can't unmute on your own. So if you need to mute, go ahead. We'll just send you another invite to unmute at your leisure.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank
Nice
you
to
for
see
having
you
us.
all. I'm sorry that I'm on my iPhone, but as I explained to Will and to Russell, I unfortunately have an event that I have to be at 7. So I'm going to speak and then I'm going to be in transit but I'll be with you all till 7. So I just wanted to explain.
Okay. And Commissioner Kim, would it be all right with you then if we start with Julie and then turn to you because of her time constraints? So she'll have a chance to speak first and then you, and then we could go to questions. Is that okay?
Yes, no, absolutely.
Great.
Did you just tell me when you think I might be done? Just kind of question for timing purposes.
Well, it depends on how many questions or discussion topics we get. And if you have a time constraint, we don't want to keep you, but we're very grateful for as much time as you could give us.
Sure. If I can be done by 7:15, I just promised my daughter's dinner today. So I thought we'd be done by 7, that's why, but
Okay. Oh, okay.
I can stay till 7:15. I'm happy.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Valerie, I guess we should start promptly at 6:30, do you think?
Yeah, sure.
So Mohima, do you want to go ahead and give everybody the lay of the land on how CB8's virtual meetings work?
Yeah. So here are some technical points. So welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us, everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for committee co-chair Valerie and Alita and our presenters. Following the presentation, co-chair will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to reactions icon, pressing raise hand, only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go down. Also, if you're on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Also, be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. Also, the chat is here for technical support only. The co-chairs will not see it. It's for technical support for me and Will to help you. Yeah, we can get started.
Thank you so much. Perfect. And right on time at 6:30 too. I mean, 6:30 also. Valerie?
Should I start? Okay, well, I want to welcome everyone to the Small Business Committee meeting of Community Board 8. We try to meet regularly. We did not have a January meeting. This is our first meeting of 2022. So a belated Happy New Year to everyone. And we're really excited tonight to have our new council member, Julie Menon from Council District 5, and the new Small Business Commissioner, Kevin Kim, with us tonight to talk about one of Community Board 8's favorite topics, which is small business. And so we were extremely excited to know that our council member has been appointed the head of the Small Business Committee of the City Council, Julie Menon. And before I let Julie speak, and she can only speak till 7, so I'm aware of that, I just want to also say, and she'll probably say a little bit about it as well, that in addition to chairing the Small Business Committee, she is also a member of the Consumer Protection Committee, the Education Committee, the Sanitation Committee, Parks, Civil Service and Labor, and Environmental Protection. So she has a very busy schedule, but all topics that Community Board 8 is very involved with. So we are very excited that you are on all of those committees. And without further ado, I'll call you Julie, if that's okay.
Please call me Julie. Everyone should call me Julie. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Alita. Thank you, CB8. It is so great to be with you. Thank you, Commissioner Kim, for being here as well. So I am ecstatic, is putting it mildly, to be appointed the chair of the Small Business Committee. And the reason why, a couple of different reasons. First of all, some of you might not know, but I was a former small business owner. So before 9/11, I owned a restaurant and catering business called Vine. My business had almost 100 employees. It was located what is now by Ground Zero, several blocks away. My business was destroyed on 9/11. I had to rebuild it. And in the weeks following 9/11, I started a not-for-profit called Wall Street Rising that was focused on small businesses and residents. And we helped over 600 small businesses stay in Lower Manhattan post 9/11. I spent a decade of my life focused on small business issues then and really trying to help them in a very significant way. I also dealt with small businesses as a former commissioner of the Department of Consumer Affairs, where I instituted the Small Business Relief Package, which were 25 reforms to lower fines on small businesses. I now want to extend that to all city agencies that assess fines where there is not a safety violation. I believe we should be giving these small businesses 30 days to cure the violation before going to a fine. I also worked extensively with small businesses in my former role as a commissioner of media and entertainment, where I worked with thousands of small businesses in the creative sectors across New York City. So to say this is something that I'm deeply passionate about would be a real understatement. So I'm really excited about it. I have so many ideas for the committee. I really look forward to hearing all of your ideas. We have a crisis. A third of our small businesses, and we have over 200,000 small businesses, have closed due to COVID, and we have thousands more that are literally on the brink of survival. So this is an urgent task at hand. I have already started that work. And so I'll have a lot to be able to announce in the coming weeks. We'll be holding hearings very shortly. So as soon as the hearing schedule is set, I promise you'll be the first to know. And I hope that all of you will come and testify. Tomorrow, the Consumer Affairs Committee, which I'm on, we are holding the open dining hearing. So for those that are interested, that hearing begins at 10. I hope many of you will sign up to speak about that. It'll be a very long hearing. We have a ton of people who are going to be testifying. It's incredibly important as the city considers making permanent open dining. And so I don't want to take up more time than that, just to say that my door is always open. Please reach out to me on any small business issue that all of you have. I am here to help and really look forward to working with Commissioner Kim. And I know that he's going to be speaking next. So look forward to his remarks as well.
Thanks.
Thank you
Julie.
so much, Julie. I just would like to introduce, I'm Alita
If I can
Camp, co-chair with Valerie, and I'd like to introduce Commissioner Kim just very briefly. He comes from the State Liquor Authority. I know he's excited to be Commissioner of Small Business Services, which will hopefully invigorate a lot of the businesses around our community and around our city. So having said that, I know that you've done a lot of service for New York as an attorney, as a mediator, as a businessman. So I will turn it over to you. But first, I think Russell Squire, the chair of Community Board 8, would like to thank you both for your presence here and for your thoughts and actions.
That's
Russell?
right. I just wanted to say, yes, welcome. And it's a big deal for us to have the chair of the Small Business Committee of the Council and also the Commissioner of Small Business. So it's Small Business Services. So we really appreciate you being here. I just did want to say thank you before we go on. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kim, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I want to begin by first thanking Councilmember Julie Menon for inviting me here tonight. I've followed her career and I know how much work she's done on behalf of small businesses. I think we have that in common. I also have operated a number of small businesses, some successful, some not so. And I think that's the nature of small businesses. My parents also, when we immigrated to this country back in 1975 to Queens, they started a small business. My mother was an artificial flower designer, and my father took her designs and went door to door in the garment district, and then they built up their business. And so I've seen kind of firsthand what it's like to be in a city where opportunities are plentiful in the respect of immigrants that barely spoke English were able to, in one generation, get to the point where I am today. So I'm really grateful to be in this role. As you mentioned, I've also been a SLA commissioner back in 2014 to 16. So I've seen it from the perspective of the regulatory side, but I've also advocated on behalf of business restaurant owners and the hospitality industry. So I've also already been in very close touch with the Hospitality Alliance and a number of other people in the industry to try to get some of these archaic, outdated Prohibition era laws addressed as well. And as Councilmember Menon also mentioned, the executive order from Mayor Adams on January 3rd, he came out on his third day in office and announced the new executive order that has directed Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer and myself as co-chairs of this interagency working group, where we are starting with the top 25 fines and violations that regulatory agencies in New York City are finding with small businesses. But we're trying to go a step further. And with the appointment of Melanie LaRocca to be the Chief Efficiency Officer, I just call it the efficiency czar for kicks and giggles. But Melanie is also very committed to this project of trying to find ways not to just reduce fines or to find violations where we can have cure periods and the education component added into it, but really looking to take some of these codes off the books in the first place. And I think we aren't going to just try to limit it to the top 25 most common fines. We are also finding that, for example, the kinds of fines that might be imposed on small businesses starting in Midtown Manhattan may not be the same types of very common fines in other geographical districts in the city. And so we've been soliciting input from small business owners all around the city through our local partners, the bids and the chambers, and that's all coming. We're going to have surveys that we're going to send out to everyone to get that kind of information as well. So if there are kinds of violations that we're finding in certain areas that don't make the top 25 list, we're going to address those as well. So I think we've been pretty active. I'm only on day 14 in the office of this new position. I think the mayor has made it clear that public safety and economic recovery are his top two priorities. I think one of the things that we're looking to do here at SBS is public safety through economic development. And we've been working with various other agencies, for example, with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and MOCJ, Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, and some nonprofits that work with returning citizens, people who've been formerly incarcerated. And we're trying to not just connect them to jobs, but trying to help them launch small businesses, to find alternative paths. So I think we're trying to take the more the total view of what public safety can also look like and how important helping reopen, not just launch new business, but reopen a lot of the businesses that have closed in this particular period and during the pandemic, and how that also adds to the public safety issue that is really top of mind for a lot of the people in your district and throughout New York City. So I'm really excited to be here, and I think it'll be more helpful if we answer questions as well. So I know, and Councilmember Menon has time limits, so I'm here to just answer any kind of questions you have. Thank you very much for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you. I spent some time talking with Jessica Walker, who's president of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, and I guess brainstorming some ideas. Before I launch into those, I'd like to ask if there are any comments from Valerie or any questions from the public before we turn to board members or comments. There's certainly a lot of work to be done to help small businesses. So I see Judy Schneider from the public has her hand raised. If you could unmute, or Judy's already unmuted. Judy.
Thank you very much, both of you. This is a desperately needed topic in our community in the East 60s. And Mr. Kim, it's great that you're looking at the fines, because that's the second most complained about thing that we hear from our merchants, and the thing that has put merchants out of business is the number of fines. And they come and they give them particularly to the restaurants, during the busiest times, like lunchtime or dinner time, when they're seating people or running the restaurant and they can't get the paperwork that's required. So that's really wonderful that you and Julie are working on that. The thing I want to ask, which may be out of line, since you were with the State Liquor Authority, is there anything you can do? We hear, the first Tuesday of every month, new restaurants trying to open in our district here in the 60s. We have 3 of them in a 2-block radius, and they've been waiting over 6-7 months to get their liquor license. And for stores to open now without having a liquor license, restaurants, it's difficult enough, but not being able to sell liquor makes it more difficult. So do you still have connections to the state liquor authority? And is there anything you can do to help speed up the process of getting the licenses?
So so specifically answering your question, when I was commissioner back in 2014-16, there was a period before I joined, and I don't take full credit for this. The chairperson at the time, Dennis Rosen, did an incredible job of taking a process that took 6 to 7 months and really shrinking it down to about 90 days. And so we know it's possible. I think, the pandemic has really made it tough for a lot of the people who work on the state and city level as well, employees. The 2 good news, I think, or positive news that came out of the State Liquor Authority recently, and I don't know if you're aware, but number 1 was that they are allowing temporary retail permits to be issued in New York City. This was something that was happening all throughout the state, except for New York City. They always carved out New York City for various reasons and made it even though majority of the licenses are being applied from the city, they never included them. But they just passed an executive, I forget what they call it, executive order to say now that they're going to allow New York City temporary retail permits. But the problem with that is that they didn't go far enough. So they have restrictions where if you're within 500 foot and the 500-foot rule kicks in, then you have to have a location that had a license in the previous 2 years. So if there was a license that was 2.5 years, you're kind of out of luck that you can't take advantage of this program. The one other recent development, I think it was literally 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, they're finally allowing conditional approvals to get licensed while they're waiting for the TC of O or the C of O from the Department of Buildings. That's become a big issue where the applicant has done everything and gotten approved, and the last thing they're waiting for is the C of O from the DOB, and it's not a state-run agency, so they have no control over what DOB does. But now they're saying, if you've gotten to the conditional approval stage, but the only thing remaining is the TC of O or C of O, they will issue the license pending your full approval. And if you don't get fully approved, then you'll be in violation of your license, and you'll have to return it. But in the meanwhile, anyway, before you had to wait 3, 4, 5, the uncertainty of when the DOB would finally issue that license was killing restaurant owners because they're paying rent, they're paying their staff, ready to open because they don't know when it's going to open. But now at least they can get going. So there's at least some positive movement, but and we can talk about this all day long, and I don't want to take too much of this time, but I'm trying to create a list of easy fixes that I think the state legislature hopefully will take on. The SLA gets a bad rap in many cases, but honestly, the state legislature really needs to initiate some of these, what I call easy fixes. And then I think we have a governor right now who is very supportive of the restaurant and hospitality industry, who will sign it into law, but it has to start from the state legislature.
Thank you. I know that Councilmember Julie Menon has to leave at 7. So are any of the hands that are raised directly for Julie Menon? If they are, could you do a thumbs up or a clap or something other than just have your hand raised? Don't want you to fall out of line. Oh, I see Shari Weiner. Okay, so then let's go to Shari so that she has a chance for Julie, and then we'll go in order. Shari, go ahead.
Yeah,
and thank you so much, Lisa, from the public for waiting.
This may have a legislative remedy, so I believe it's appropriate to address to the Assembly council member. We hear stories where landlords increase rents on their small business tenants, huge amounts of rents, and in many cases that causes the tenant to have to shut down. Is there any way that rent increases can be regulated so they don't become so burdensome on an existing business?
Unmute, council member.
Thank you. I just needed to be unmuted. Yes, absolutely. There's actually a bill from the council from last year, Steve Levin's bill, council member Steve Levin, who's no longer in the council. That's a rent regulation bill. So our new council will be looking at this prior legislation to see, but basically what council member Levin's bill does is it sets up a structure that's similar to the rent guidelines board for residential rents, but it sets them for small business commercial rents. So that's something we're absolutely going to be looking at and working with the council staff and the legal staff on that.
Thanks. Before we go to Lisa, I just want to sort of bootstrap my way onto the rent question. And it's a question that has been dogging the Upper East Side small businesses for a really long time, and that's the commercial rent tax. And we know that, after 9/11, the commercial rent tax was repealed for downtown. And, since the pandemic is very similar in effect in terms of, and the Upper East Side is one of the few communities that still has the commercial rent tax. Just wondering, Councilmember Menon and Commissioner Kim, whether you have any thoughts on rolling that back?
100%. It's completely unfair. It's completely inequitable. I spoke about this at length during my campaign. We have to roll this back. We have to eradicate this unfair and punitive tax that is hurting our small businesses and our community. I am 100% committed to that, to a legislative fix to this.
Appreciate that.
That was also important to Councilmember Keith Powers, also another council member from our district. So that would be excellent if you could get rid of that.
It would be nice to have the support of the executive branch and the mayor to support that rollback. When you were asking Commissioner Kim about things that especially affect this community, that's something that we hear about in our small business committee all the time. Okay, Lisa, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and for you all to be here. What I want to talk about is really, I'm looking for a solution to the issue of it's a restaurant that's in my building. And we've had a problem with the garbage and the sanitation issues. And I've actually called the sanitation department. During the summer of this year, and he's a fairly new restaurant owner, so it's a small business. And during the summer, he was stacking his garbage about 7 feet high up against the building. And there was garbage that was pouring out of the pails, that was coming out of the bags. And I, for the first time in all the years I've lived in my building, and I've lived here a long time, now have small roaches. And I think it came from all this garbage that he's got. And when I talked to him about it, I was trying to find a solution. And he said, if he puts, I was saying you need to put your garbage in closed containers. And he said that people steal the tops of the containers. So I suggested containers that are have attached tops. And I also wondered, because before we had a bodega, and they used to have a big metal dumpster with a closed container, and they had a big food bar. So they were always putting food inside this container. And there weren't the amount of bugs or rodents that I've seen since this restaurant has been doing it. Now, I spoke to him actually a couple of days ago, and he said that he couldn't put a dumpster on the corner. The city wouldn't let him. So I was wondering what the rules and regulations are for a restaurant, because now that we're going to have the street cafes along with the sidewalk cafes, and I'm all for more business for the restaurants. I think it's a great thing. I love to see everybody eating out during the warm weather and so forth. But I think restaurants need to not be fined, or we need some kind of a solution to make sure that their garbage is in a tightly closed container, so the rodents and the bugs can't get to it, or it doesn't draw them in. So I'm just looking for a solution for people like him. He's saying that his garbage is being picked up every night for the most part. He just started doing that, and it cost him about $1,500 a month to have that to have garbage pickup every day.
So I'm happy to start, and then I'll turn it over to the commissioner. I completely agree with you. So I am a big fan of containerized garbage. It's something I believe we need to be looking at throughout the city. I'm on the sanitation committee. I know it's something that I'm personally going to be advocating very strongly for. I also want to let you know that I allocated $120,000 of my budget to increase trash pickup in Community Board 8 area to 4 times a day during the week, and got 8 mid-block litter baskets on East 86th Street. With that said, if you want to drop in the chat box the exact address of the business, I'm happy to look into it. And now I'll turn it over to the commissioner to see what he wants to say.
I just want to try to answer your question. I know garbage pickup is required daily, and it is challenging a little bit about the placement of the garbage a lot of times. Yesterday, I was out with the mayor in Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, and we were visiting some of the restaurants there and eating out in the 20-degree cold for lunch. He hadn't eaten in it all day, so I guess we had to go through that motion. But one of the discussions that came up was actually about containerized garbage systems, and he was talking about the one in Buenos Aires that was being used and that they were looking into it. The administration's been looking into these 2 garbage containers that go on the end of the blocks and how it's worked in Buenos Aires. So I just heard about it yesterday, and I can try to find out more information for you as well, and get it through the community board to get to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, there doesn't seem to be anyone else from the public, so let's go to the board members. Oh, well, you know what? Matt Bauer, who's the head of the Madison Avenue bid, has his hand raised, and then Andrew Ravaschieri. So Matt, hi.
Hi, thanks so much, and we're honored to have you both here at our community board. Thank you. And Madison Avenue bid from 57th to 86th Street. And actually, just wanted to say, appreciate all your efforts in regulatory reform. And I just want to point out, just in this last month, 3 very small businesses have opened up on Madison. Rosebox sells roses, actually, in boxes. Poppy, a cafe, a gallery called Leon Tovar. And just want to emphasize as well how important it is just to get the word out and for the community to come out and shop at our local small businesses. There's nothing better that could help them more than to have them in your store and supporting them, and just want to work with you and the community board to do all we can to get the word out about retailers and to emphasize shopping locally. Thanks again.
I'm just going to take a moment here, Matt, because you reminded me that one of the things that Jessica and I had talked about are the ideas of maps of stores, either in specific areas or maybe maps to related stores around the city or around a larger geographic area. I was walking down Madison Avenue in the 20s a few weeks ago and was astonished at how many furniture stores are there now, places I hadn't seen in a long time. And it's the flower district used to be equally inviting, that you go and you look at something. And I know, Matt, you and I have had conversations about a crystal district on Madison Avenue. So I'm just wondering if there are plans, because it does cost money to produce a map like that, that's either printed for people at hotels or online for people to use on their phones. I guess I'm a little antiquated with the print edition, but to be able to create maps of specific stores to make it easier for people, even for New Yorkers, to know what's in a particular neighborhood, because small business, not just restaurants, but actual small businesses that are not restaurants, are really so vital to the vibrancy and the survival and the durability of New York as a place that people want to visit and live in. Commissioner or Julie?
I'll let the council member go first because of our limited time.
Oh, she might be.
Hi, no, sorry, I'm here. Hi, can you see me? Hold on one second. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm in transit. I apologize. So, yeah, so I agree with what you're saying. And I mean, I think, again, this talks about the urgency of the problem and why we really need to make sure that we're firing on all cylinders, every tool in our toolbox to try to help these businesses. And I know a lot of the issues that have been raised so far really talk about fine reduction, which Commissioner Kim talked about as well. one of the things we're going to be looking at is legislatively codifying the fine reduction, because what Mayor Adams did in the executive order is instructed these agencies to come up with the top 25 rules that where they're the top fines. But now we need to be doing so much more than that. And we need to do that legislatively. I'm sorry, it's dark in here that you can't see me. But so that's one of the things. And then the other thing that I would say in terms of the small business crisis we have is we can't understate the importance of advertising and promotion. I've been speaking to NYC and Company. I used to serve on their executive board. We need to do a buy local, shop local ad campaign that is truly supporting our small businesses. In my humble opinion, the city has not done enough of that. We haven't seen enough of buy local, shop local. And so many people are instead buying their goods online, and we need to get people to go out and support these brick and mortar businesses. So those are some of the things, you know, that I think we have to focus on.
Thank you, Julie. Before you fly and before we go back to the commissioner, there's one member of the public who has a question, Todd Stein. Do you have time for that, Julie?
I think she's there. She's just muted.
Okay, well, if we could go to Todd. Did you find him, Mohima? And could you, yes, I see, and you're unmuted. Todd, if you could go ahead.
Yeah, I just, Julie, you and I had met on your campaign trail. I have 2 elder parents. They were both in wheelchairs. We took a nice picture together.
I remember you. I do. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, I've tried to reach you through email and also Instagram. I'd like to try to make sure you know I'm trying to reach you.
Okay.
I don't know, recent article on my family, the cover story of the New York Times, but a lot of elder issues that I'd like to keep moving forward and discussing with you.
Sure.
It was a cover in November, and they kind of sensationalized the story a bit. I mentioned it to you when we met at the Met.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, when you met my parents. But I'd like to try to connect with you.
Sure. So you can always reach me at jmenin, which is JMENIN at council.nyc.gov. That is my city email. Please reach out to me at any time.
We can put that in the chat too.
We'll put it in the chat box. Yes, everything should be sent to the city email. So we'll put it in the chat box, and please feel free to reach out there.
Okay, we have a few quick seconds. Andrew, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And I'm so honored to have this final last comment. I'm so happy we're talking about small business. For every dollar that's spent at a mom and pop shop, 67 cents of it stays within the local economy. It's the backbone of New York, our economy and our spirit. And it's why it's so devastating when they disappear. And right now, in terms of real estate, we're seeing these excellent conditions for luxury real estate developers to accumulate a lot of small tenement buildings, which usually house these mom and pop shops. And they're buying the block in bulk, and then they're knocking down the buildings. And in fact, on the southwest and southeast corners of 83rd and 2nd, we're starting to see this. My hardware shop is gone. Big Daddy's is gone. There was a toy shop that was gone. What can we do to stop the demolition of mom and pop shops? Because, like, for example, the block on 79th and 1st is where I first learned to drink coffee. It was at Annalise, which was also a safe haven shop, which for those who aren't familiar is where when you're a young kid and you're trying to be independent and you don't feel safe, you're welcomed into the shop and protected, which is really important. So and that block's been empty for years, and now it's going to be a hospital building without the same kind of retail. So what can we do to stop that sort of demolition? So yeah,
it's a great question. So a number of different things. One is legacy small businesses. So the city of San Francisco did legacy small business legislation, which really tries to protect mom and pop businesses that help to give the neighborhood character that have been in a community for years and years and years. So I'm working with the council right now on that element to see if we can do something similar in New York City on legacy small business legislation. That would be the first thing. The second thing is, we talked a little bit about rent regulation earlier, but that certainly we're going to need to really think outside of the box, because for many of these small businesses are being priced out of the neighborhood, and we have to figure out how we are going to protect them. I also do believe that this kind of advertising and promotion that I'm talking about is really important, because so many times I've seen it happen where people say they bemoan the fact that their beloved small business down the block from them is under stress, and yet they continue to order things online. I'm not saying people should never order things online. What I'm saying is every time that you click a button and you're ordering that product online, think about instead going into your local store and buying it in a brick and mortar business. We have to change that behavior because we need to increase foot traffic. After 9/11, and I mentioned in the beginning that I started a not-for-profit after 9/11 that was focused on helping small businesses, it was advertising and promotion that saved our businesses. It was doing programs that convinced people to buy local, shop local. We also need to be working with bids. Those are incredibly important organizations on advertising and promotion. We need to be working with NYC and Company on advertising and promotion, our cultural institutions, and we need to be using all of those different levers that we have. So I'm going to be working on that as chair of small business, but there are many other things that we need to focus on as well. And my door is always open. So if you have specific ideas that you think we should be doing that we're not doing, please do let me know.
Thank you so much, Julie. And it's great to have such an enthusiastic proponent of small business and with creative, more potent ideas in some ways than simple monetary fine reduction. Not that that's important, but doing other things as well. Commissioner, before we ask other board members for their comments and questions, would you like to add to the discussion that we've been having up to now?
Sure. But I think if Councilmember Menon has to leave, I think if anyone else has any more questions for her, and then I'm happy to chime in after
Yeah,
that.
I'm happy to answer one or two more questions, and then I apologize, I have to hop off into this event. But if there are any more specific questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
I have one, and then we'll go to
what about Kaz? I think Kaz has his hand.
I was following up on what Julie had said, but that's okay. Kaz and Billy, but we have someone else from the public. So I see Haina Just Michael or Haina Just Michael. Haina, thank you.
Haina, thank you. And thank you, everyone.
You are muted again. You're muted.
Thank you. I was saying thank you. Hopefully I'm back. I'll make this brief. It's not specifically about small business, but it does have to do with small business and general quality of life. And I have spoken to many people, city council, about the dog poop on the streets. I've been on the west side, the east side. The east side is covered. We have very healthy dogs, thankfully, and it's just not being picked up enough, especially when there's snow. People let the dogs poo in the snow, then it melts and it's still there. And they let the dogs urinate in the middle of the sidewalks. I really think there needs to be an education campaign on what it means to curb your dog, which doesn't mean just pick up. It means go to the curb. And I don't know if this takes legislation. I don't know if it's just a media campaign, which could be very cheap in terms of Facebook, Twitter, and all that. And just reminding people, we don't have to go as far as some places that actually take the DNA of the dog and then you get a bill in the mail because you didn't pick up your dog, pick up the poop, and you get a summons. But I'd really love to help your people, whoever, to just get this campaign going. It's a frustration of mine since I've lived here for the last 4.5 years, and God bless healthy dogs. What can I say?
Yeah. Okay. I completely understand what you're saying. And it is a public awareness campaign. I face this issue myself when I walk my 3-year-old to school and we're dodging the dog poop. So I get it. We can focus on it. And, thank you for raising it.
Thank you. Okay. Kaz and then Billy.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions concerning DSNY and any enforcement in the city. I just get the feeling that there's really non-uniform enforcement. I was talking to somebody in Queens the other day. They've got a citation from DSNY for a dirty sidewalk. And I'm looking at the photo that they sent. There's about 2 or 3 pieces of paper on the sidewalk, yet they got cited for a dirty sidewalk. I'm walking around New York City, Manhattan, the Upper East Side, and you see absolute filth, and it's there forever. No citations, nothing gets done. The other one also with snow removal. You walk on the sidewalk, some sidewalks are very clear. You come to some other corner or some places, it hasn't been cleared for days. So enforcement needs to be corrected in New York City for everything. The other one, a short one, we have rent relief for tenants. So there's always tenants that can afford it but do not pay. So in the meantime, the landlord is stuck with the paying of the extra maintenance, the bills and everything else. And my final one is with the SLA. I have a liquor license. The SLA has all my information. They've got my fingerprints, my date of birth, my financials, my everything. I apply for a license at another location. Why does it take 9 months to get that SLA license when the SLA has all the relevant information? So they're the questions. We can, answer them or not, or come back to us or whatever. Thanks.
I don't know, Julie or Commissioner Kim?
I'll let the council member go first.
Okay, sorry, someone had to unmute me. Now I'm unmuted. So I'm going to take the first one, which is on selective enforcement. So one of the things that Mayor Adams' executive order does is it orders these city agencies to have their top fine issues, to really come up with a list of the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 issues where these businesses are getting onerous fines, and then hopefully eradicating those regulations. And what I was saying is, from the council perspective, I'm looking at trying to codify that legislatively. So on issues of selective enforcement, we're going to need to look at that. I'm on the sanitation committee. We're going to look at selective enforcement on sanitation issues. If you're finding specific issues in Council District 5, please bring them to my attention, to my staff's attention, and we would be happy to look into it. I know you also talked about SLA, so I'm going to leave that to Commissioner Kim. And I apologize, I'm going to have to hop off now, but if anyone has additional questions for me, please reach out at any time. And thank you so much, CB8. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Alita, for inviting me. And I'm happy to come back as often as you want me to.
Well,
and thanks,
you.
Commissioner Kim.
Be
Thank
careful
you.
out there.
Thank
Stay
you.
well. Stay well,
Thanks, everyone.
And stay warm. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks.
Yes, so let me just hop back to the previous question about small businesses shutting down and developers coming in and developing big box stores. And I think, one of the things we really do is try to help business owners with learning about operations. I think a lot of people start businesses and don't realize the full magnitude of some of the things that are required in running a successful business. So, we're just trying to help them operate efficiently so that then they can pay the rent. And then the smaller landlords hopefully are making enough of a profit to be able to not sell their properties so that somebody can assemble for a bigger development. And so I think there are efforts on our part to help out. We also have a commercial lease assistance program that we had during the COVID pandemic period, where we were trying to help ease some of the burden of rent payments for a lot of the small business owners. To the question of the the bid, Matt, I think you had mentioned about the new businesses launching in Madison Avenue. I think it's fantastic to hear. I was out in Jamaica, Queens as well, and we did a corridor walk with Councilmember Natasha Williams and Councilmember Linda Lee. And what we found there was, we found 3 businesses that had all opened in the past year as well. And some of them were doing very well. And they opened without even knowing about our services. And that's part of what we're trying to do, is educate everyone throughout the city of all the resources we have. One business that just opened in Union Square on January 21st. That was my 3rd day on the job, and I got to go to the ribbon cutting, and they didn't have ribbons, so we all bit into the burger on the count of 3, which was our version of the ribbon cutting, which was great. Plant Burger, what they did was, on December 14th, they contacted us and said, we are running into bureaucratic red tape, and we have a program called New York City Business Quick Start. Some of you may have heard of it. It's come in different forms in the past. But what we do is we have small business advocates who then can contact the different agencies that need to be contacted, and you need to get permits from DOH, DOT, DOB, fire department, And we were able to get them open on January 21st. So December 14th to January 21st. They didn't have a liquor license, but we were able to get that in what I deem to be almost record time in New York City. And we've been advocating and pushing this program out. We have compliance advisors that you can call out, and they'll come out, walk the premise with you, and tell you what a DOH, FDNY, one of the other regulatory agencies might fine you for, but they're there to preview that for you before you actually get fined. So we have a number of tools and resources that people are still not utilizing at the rate that we hope that they do. So our bids have been great partners, our chambers, your community boards, they've all been out there trying to get this word out. And we hope you can help spread the word to your small business owners as well. The New York City Business Quick Start program is something that we're looking to try to make even more efficient. And I will tell you, this administration with a new CTO that has kind of consolidated all the technology divisions under one CTO, Matt Frazier, we're in constant communication with him and Melanie LaRocca, the business efficiencies are, and SBS and the other agencies that are involved with the regulatory aspect of this, to all come together to try to come up with a portal where somebody can open up a business in record time compared to what people are going through now. I think part of the frustration is not only how long it takes, but it's the uncertainty of how long it takes, right? And we talked about this with the SLA, but even non-alcohol selling businesses, they just don't know when the FDNY, when Con Ed is going to turn on their gas, when the health inspector is finally going to come out to give them the okay. So we're trying to come up with something, and this is a long-term project. I'm not saying this is going to happen in the next month or two. This could be a year or two, but if we can come together to come up with a technological solution, more of a one-stop shop, plus we have the agencies that are coordinated so that it would take a business owner a finite period of time. It could be 90 days, it could be 120 days, but at least as a business owner, and you're not just sitting there paying rent and hiring staff and waiting for someday magically when one of the final inspections from one of the myriad agencies that you need approval from show up. So those are things that we are actively looking into right now. I know it's not an easy solution. It's tremendous, the challenges that we're seeing. For example, there is no unique identifying number or some kind of ID that people can use to track a business. So what I mean by that is the DOB uses block and lot, right? But if you're applying to another business, they don't use block and lot. The other agencies don't use block and lot to refer to some kind of a business opening up in a certain location. They use a street address or something else. And so trying to coordinate all that on the back end is a really, really big task, but that's what we're looking into right now. And we're only 1 month in, but we're really trying to tackle this from a big holistic view as we also try to help people on the ground with our New York City Business Quick Start program. And then your state liquor authority question, why does it take 9 months? So I will share some good news that I heard. The SLA finally this summer will go to a much more online system of applying. Believe it or not, I know the state's been working on this ever since I was a commissioner back then. They had people hired to look at all the technology behind the back office operations, and they quite haven't been able to get it right. And so the fact that a lot of the applications are still paper-based, and then you send in your application and it goes to a PO box, check processing center, which then takes about a week or two, depending. Then you finally get once the check clears, then you get it to the SLA offices, and then they give you a serial number, right? So it's already been 2-3 weeks. And then the people had to already wait 30 days for the community board review process. So by the time the review even just gets started, you're already a kind of month and a half, 2 months in. And then you have to wait for an ALJ hearing if you have a 500-foot case hearing, and then there are a limited number of ALJs. So the process has kind of gotten to be so onerous and burdensome for the owner. And as Mr. Kaz mentioned, he's a repeating business owner who already went through this process once. That's what they're trying to hope that the temporary retail license will help mitigate some of the delays, but it could go further, and it hasn't.
Thank you so much, not only for answering them, but for remembering all of the questions. So we have, and we're going to post, Will just chatted, Will Brightbill, our district manager, just chatted a link to this Business Quick Start, which sounds like a really valuable program. And I think we'll post something like that on the Small Business Committee page of the Community Board 8 website. Billy, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody, and Commissioner, congratulations on your appointment, and thank you for joining us. It means a lot to us. I guess, there's so much to ask, and maybe I'll narrow it to 2 questions, if I may. One question is just that we have right to counsel for tenants to a degree in New York City, and I'm wondering if your agency's given thought to a right to counsel for small businesses. I know it's been discussed in the Small Business Committee in years past. And then the second question, and this is maybe a little bit off the beaten path, although as a committee we've discussed it before. We've talked about, excessive fees connected with delivery services like Seamless and Uber Eats. Why couldn't the city or the state get in the business of essentially creating a public Seamless? Why couldn't there be some version where restaurants could sign up and you wouldn't have to deal with the delivery fees and other hassle, but folks like myself who want to order delivery could scan a list of local options? I'm just curious whether you see any immediate barriers to that as an idea. Thank you.
In general, I think the history shows that when you have government start getting involved with certain kind of entrepreneurial efforts, it doesn't always end so well. So I can't really opine on that. I think, though, what I can share is that when Plant Burger, the business that opened up in Union Square using New York City Business Quick Start, what they did was they partnered up with a nonprofit that I can't remember the name right now, but I think if you Google their opening, they were there, that does this food delivery at no cost, basically, or a nonprofit or a very minimal cost to folks who really are food insecure, and to do it in a way that it's a dignified manner to deliver food to them. So I think food delivery is an area that if people get creative enough, or if there's enough philanthropic effort behind it, like this organization's been doing. They said they work with like 1,000 restaurants, or they've served thousands of meals during pandemic. I think that can help in some ways. And then this brings me to the question of, how do you also help the local small businesses have a better chance of surviving? I know Councilmember Menon pointed out rightly that you do need to have an awareness. You need to have a strong campaign, shop locally. We did that here at the SBS before I came, shop local. And then I feel like the next challenge that's kind of coming down for a lot of the local grocery stores, bodegas, delis, is that when we have empty retail stores, there are the bigger businesses that are in this space. They're temporarily renting out these retail spaces to even shorten the time for delivery, right? Which makes them more attractive, even if they're charging more. And I think that's a next big threat coming down the road for a lot of the corner bodega and delis, that, we have to figure out some way to support, or like you said, help them, not run the program as government, but really try to be what we can do best, which is convene the groups together. Maybe it's the Association of Bodega Owners, the deli owners, the supermarket, local owners, and to help them create an ecosystem where they can have a delivery system that can compete with someone like that, right? It's hard to compete with the Whole Foods of the world, or whoever sets up one of these little shops. So I feel like there are ways that we need to be proactive about it, but I don't know about quite taking over it as a business from the government side. One thing I did want to address from before was about the inconsistency of enforcement. That is also in the executive order, and we are looking at that too, in terms of how we train the inspectors. Mayor Adams yesterday at Arthur Avenue pointed that out. On Monday, you could have Inspector A show up and say everything's fine, and then Thursday, Inspector Z shows up and says, well, you have 3 pieces of paper here, whatever it is, and then fine you. And so we are also taking a very close look, deep dive into the consistency of enforcement and consistency of training of the inspectors as part of this executive order.
And about that, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, how many enforcement officers do you have? Because that's also another issue, is that, you know, we've constantly on the Upper East Side, in terms of the open restaurant and open streets program, been calling up and saying, you know, this person has a violation, and you know, we don't particularly feel like we need to call. We should have to call every day, but there should be enforcement out there, and to look over these things on a regular basis without the general public having to call and basically say, oh, business A is non-compliant.
So SBS is not an enforcement agency. We have zero enforcement personnel. We have compliance advisors, to the contrary, who go out to try to help people avoid the fines when the enforcement team from the various agencies show up. So I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the total number of enforcement teams look like for each agency, but we are exactly on the opposite side, trying to educate and teach the small business owners how to not get fines from those enforcement agents in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I know you have to leave. I had one more question for you, and this came up. I actually listened in to the almost 9-hour hearing that transpired at the Zoning Commission in terms of the open restaurants and the zoning bill. And a lot of, over the course of 9 hours, while everyone was really in favor of aiding restaurants in the face of the pandemic, there was also a lot of testimony from a number of different groups about why are we treating one small business differently than other small businesses, and why should this particular industry essentially be being treated better than other small businesses like small shoemakers and mom and pop, you know, grocery stores, etc. So I was wondering what the position of the small business agency was on that topic.
Well, I think if you look at the total number of jobs that are supported by our restaurant and retail businesses, I think I've seen the numbers as high as 170,000 less jobs in this particular industry as of last November than 2 years ago, November of 2019. I think the percentage of people and the percentage of small businesses, it was something like 40%, but I think it's a really big industry and it employs a tremendous number of people, which is why I think we're very supportive. But even to the open restaurants program, we understand that there are neighborhoods and communities, especially the older neighborhoods. For example, Chinatown down there, the streets are very narrow and there's not always full support of the open restaurants program and having structures taking up space. Arthur Avenue, same thing, parking is a concern and there are people not as supportive. So I think the restaurant and hospitality industry is a real big part. I can get you the numbers, but I think that's one of the major reasons why there's a lot of support for this particular industry.
What do you say to the argument that because the open restaurant program really favors corner spots, in the sense of if you're a restaurant in a corner building, you get basically the Avenue Street and the side street, and that we will lose, you know, landlords will throw out small groceries, bodegas, etc., in favor of putting in a restaurant because they know they can charge a higher rent. And, you know, aren't you really sacrificing one small business for another? And also more the balance of different businesses in a community. And I just wondered how that's going to be looked at.
Yeah, so I think that's why tomorrow's hearing is really important. I know you were at the bill Zoom, you said it took 9 hours. I hear tomorrow there's probably over 150 people signed up to speak at least, and it should be like 12 hours of Zoom. So I'm just warning you in case you decide to venture into that pool. But, I think it was an emergency response during the pandemic that all of this was allowed. And I think tomorrow's hearing, all sides will get to voice their opinions. before they finalize the program, if it's going to pass, which it looks like it will. But these are the issues that are being addressed there. And so I'll leave it up to the legislators and then the administration to chime in at that point. But the open restaurants program was in response to an unprecedented pandemic in our lifetimes. And I think that it worked as well as it could for what it was trying to do, whether some aspects of it need to be addressed. And that's the whole purpose of tomorrow's hearing.
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate that. I don't know, Alita, unless you have any questions, maybe we should let the commissioner get some dinner for his little girl.
I know, I do have a point. I'm following up on the open restaurants program. As someone pointed out, sometimes the sheds expand to the front of, I guess, adjoining businesses, and people can't see what that adjoining business is from across the street where they may be otherwise enticed. So that would be a concern. But overall, there have been a lot of expressions of support for small businesses that have not gotten the level of support or notice from the city that the open restaurants have. I also just wanted to mention that maybe there are opportunities for the city, for small businesses and large businesses, big businesses, to work together, because big businesses have a lot of resource. And I'm not suggesting public-private partnerships, which often benefit the private and not so much the public, but ways that big businesses could share their resources to support small businesses that are good for everyone, because small delis for lunch for their employees, tailors, jewelry stores, all kinds of businesses in that area. And also Gail Brewer had focused a bit on those delivery grocery options in the open storefronts. Berkshire Bucks was something that was used to support local businesses up in the Berkshires. And since you're talking about supporting local businesses here, maybe something like that, a real tangible way of supporting small businesses, the way American Express does on Shop Local Saturday following Black Friday. And one last thing is that developers often will, I think, as you mentioned, use their large lobbies for large businesses. But maybe there are ways to encourage them to possibly divide up the space differently and get less money from the small businesses in a smaller space and more money from large businesses like banks or Duaneries or CVSs in a larger space, and support small business in that way. Because I've seen from large new developments on 86th Street, on 2nd Avenue, that the lobbies are restaurants, they're Old Navy, they're national chains, and the small businesses that were kicked out, like the affordable tenants, but that's another story, are being lost. And my last question was, and I don't expect you to comment, but these are just ideas, is whether you've noticed more, I mean, it would be great if you could, but I know you're in a rush, but whether there have been more evictions since the eviction moratorium, which worked for commercial businesses, also has expired, what you've seen with respect to that. And thank you so much.
No, thank you. I don't have an answer to that eviction question, but we'll get our team to look it up and get you back information. I will say that the Madison Avenue bid was one of the biggest participants in the open storefronts program that you referenced, where retail businesses were allowed to extend out into the sidewalk. Non-restaurants were able to extend out to the sidewalk to kind of be able to do their business. And then in terms of the structure themselves, that is another big discussion that's going to happen, and it's going to have the public weigh in as well. And I think what's the goal of that is to design safe, very kind of uniform structures, but uniform in the sense of maybe there'll be 3 approved designs and you can kind of choose from one. One of the things we noticed at Arthur Avenue that was interesting, the Mario's restaurant, the owner had mentioned that she had put the floor of the outdoor area in terms of sections so that she can lift up the section and do power washes under each section. And one of the issues I think that's happening for these sheds, some of them that are kind of elevated, they haven't been cleaned for 1.5 years underneath, and they're food particles. And then of course the rodent issue comes, as we had talked about, and the roach issues come. So I think there are great ideas that people are bringing to the table that are actually using different forms of the outdoor space. But at the end of the day, I think it'll make everyone's job easier, and the enforcement later on that needs to happen to make sure that these sheds are first and foremost safe, but also, usable and are helpful to the restaurants at the end of the day. So once we get to that phase of the program, I think that'll be more in the summer where people are going to be asked to chime in, and hopefully you'll do the same. But and so thank you again. I'm happy to come back again.
We're happy to have you. Thank you so much.
We
And
can make you a
anytime you can reach
regular
out to
month.
us. We're always here, and please help spread the word about all our programs, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
We
evening.
really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Valerie, is there anything else before we get to old business, new business?
I don't know. I mean, I think, look, there are a number of people on the Zoom here tonight who have connections with businesses up on the Upper East Side. I think, we should maybe be a clearinghouse for different types of fines that businesses in our neighborhood are getting. And so we can maybe get a letter off to SBS with perhaps the fines that are unique, if you will, or that are the ones that we usually see up here, so we can help represent our small businesses in that discussion of what needs to be addressed to help them conduct their business in a more with regular expectations, not having one inspector come in one day and say one thing and then the next day somebody comes in and says something else, because it is very disruptive to try to run your business with 10 different people telling you 10 different things and having fines accumulate for no real reason. So I think maybe I know East 60s has a lot of restaurants in their membership, and if they can put together something, I think it would be helpful if we can be a clearinghouse for that, whether it's through our council member or directly to Commissioner Kim. I think that would be helpful. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, we have the two public members are restaurant owners, Courtney Bond and Maureen Donahue. So maybe you could help with your connections of other restaurateurs or food entrepreneurs, if you will, to be able to do something like that. And I know fines are not limited only to restaurants. There may be more that apply to restaurants, but small businesses get hit with sanitation fines too, and other ones. So I think that would be a great idea if we could help facilitate some kind of smoother sailing program with consistency in fines and inspectors, hopefully. Valerie, I know Michelle has her hand up, so let's go to Michelle.
Thanks, Alita. Very good meeting tonight. It was terrific to hear from the commissioner and the council member. A question, and maybe the small business people that are on can answer this. But with all the direction and all the concern and all the resources and all the legislation being directed towards the restaurants, I wonder if anybody had really talked to the other small businesses. And what I'm thinking is that in many cases, this may end up being restricted in the final legislation. But at the moment, there are restaurateurs that have other small businesses abutting theirs or vacant storefronts, and they will extend the shed through in front of all of those. I'm thinking of one on the Upper East Side. It goes through 4 small businesses, one of which is a nail salon. Now, if you have a big shed like this in front of your premises, a walk-by customer on the other side of the street, potential, cannot see your business. They do not see your front entrance. They do not see your signage. They don't know that you are even there. And a lot of the advertising and the benefit of walk-ins, why you call walk-in traffic, is because these businesses have to have visibility on the street. That's one of the big pluses of being a bricks and mortar storefront on ground level. And you'll typically find that ground level rents are more costly than the upper levels for exactly this reason. When you block almost an entire street with sheds, the other small businesses are no longer visible, which is a main source of their advertising. And also, when we have looked at those who use parking meters, we found that the meters were very helpful to small businesses because a lot of people use their cars and they jump around doing errands. You know, they'll run into the cleaners here, and then they'll, you know, run into a bodega and get a cup of coffee, and however. And as a matter of fact, there was one bodega whose business went down 40%. He personally reported that to us. It was a bodega in the 60s whose business went down 40% when the bike lanes went in, because his taxi cabs who used him on a break, they would jump in for coffee or snack or whatever. They now couldn't, you know, park at the meter out front, run in for a minute and come back out. They were completely blocked from the bike lanes. So it just seems to me, while I'm in favor, or I was in favor, of the open restaurants program, because there's no question it was beneficial during the pandemic and for the past 2 years. However, I'm firmly opposed to it becoming permanent without little trial periods, you know, extending it every 3-4 months, 6 months, as the pandemic continues to diminish, to see whether or not these restaurants, which once stood proudly on their own 2 legs, could do so again. But in all of this conversation, I have never heard of the other small businesses being polled or consulted on how this program affects them. As I've never heard the residents be polled or consulted as to how this affects them. So while it's wonderful to help the restaurants, if you are a little nail salon next door to an 8-foot shed, or if you are a resident in an apartment that overlooks this shed, you seem to be left out of this conversation. And I know that it affects these 2 contingencies. So that's a big part of small business. I should have spoken sooner, because I would have liked our guests to have heard these comments. But at any rate, I wonder if anybody else on this call, small business, board members, anybody, has heard, or the people who are on for the bids, if they've actually talked to any of their other small businesses, and how are they faring through all of this. Thanks for giving me that time.
Well, Michelle, since you started speaking, I think you've generated some discussion. But what I'm also wondering, Valerie, is if we could post something like we were doing in the congestion pricing task force to allow input from the public on issues that matter, that we could then invite either the council member and commissioner back or bring to the city. In the meantime, I neglected to mention that we have some restaurateurs on our own community board as full-time members. So having said that, I'll turn it over to John Phillips, followed by, you know what, Rob Burns, who's a member of the public and the head of the East 60s bid. I'm sorry, Rob, it's the full official name is escaping me, but why don't we go to Rob first?
East Midtown Partnership right there.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And yeah, I just want to, Michelle made some good points. I can't speak for everyone in the city, obviously. I can speak for the Bid Association. We just had a meeting with SBS this morning, as we do every 2 weeks. And we really pushed the idea that, first of all, a correction, COVID is not over. We're not over the pandemic. In December, we saw office occupancy drop to 1/3 of what it was. And in a month earlier, and a month earlier, it was 1/3 of what it was before. We are only up to still about 23%, at least in my district right now. So this is still a problem. But I just want to comment to answer Michelle, and just making sure she knows that the bids are really still pushing the fact that this affects not just restaurants, but all commerce. That we want our other businesses to have we want them to have the visibility, and we want them to have the ability to use outdoors for commerce if necessary, because there are still, just like there are people that are reluctant to eat in restaurants, or people that are reluctant to go into a retail establishment. The other thing is that, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't think I am. I don't believe that a restaurant is able to just automatically expand and assume its neighboring businesses. I think they have to agree to that first.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So, so this is like, I don't think you have to worry about the average restaurant just taking over the dry cleaner, the shoe repair place. But you're right, though. I mean, going back to what Michelle said, this is important, though. Restaurant, I mean, it is, COVID has devastated the restaurant industry in the city. If there are still restaurants around, they're probably not paying their rent, not able to pay their rent. But I agree, we can't forget all the other retail and service establishments. And so that's an important fact. It's not let's not pit them against, against each other.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that was part of my question to the commissioner when I was asking him whether the small business was going, what their feeling was. And I think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he was basically trying to say that the restaurant industry was, a little bit more important because of all the workers, et cetera. But, smart minds can differ on that topic. But I think, like I said, during that hearing, there was a lot of thought about why, it's okay, it's a temporary thing and maybe it should be renewed, but there's a lot of other businesses that are being hurt. But maybe we can just jump over to John for a second. He's been waiting patiently.
Well, you know what, but John's a board member. If we could, and I know John and Courtney are friends. Courtney's a public member on the committee. So let's just go to Courtney. Is that all right, John? Just you can nod or shake your head. Yeah. Okay, Courtney. Thank you, Mahima, for unmuting her. Thank you. Go ahead, Courtney.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Honestly, this is a fantastic meeting. And I know you guys all know I'm in the process of opening up that second space. My contractors left at 6:20 and I ran over here so that I could make it for this meeting. And I apologize that I haven't been able to make it to more, but I'm in the final weeks of opening up Not a Speakeasy, which will probably open in the beginning of March. And so it's just been a little crazy, but I'm super happy that I'm here. And to what Michelle had said, I think she's speaking of, or maybe she's not, but if she's talking about the nail studio, I think it's Nail Studio on 89th. That's my nail place in Siena. It has their big outdoor cafe that kind of blocks that. And so to that point, not only do they have to get permission, but if you ask them, they prefer it because instead of maybe, yes, I understand the point about walking on the other side of the sidewalk that those guests or people would not be able to see, but then instead you have, a dedicated 30, 40 people who are sitting there. And I mean, I was getting my nails done myself and saw somebody that I knew. And it was one of those things where the studio likes it because not only does it bring, light and business instead of just having a parked car in front of their window, but then also it has now you have 30, 40 dedicated people staring at that business thinking, oh, do I need to get my nails done? So it brings a different type of visibility to their business. And certainly, you never want to piss off your neighbors. Anything I do is always within the neighbors. You would never just kind of tromps around and build something without at least getting the okay. When I had to put my little outdoor patio out, over the summer for the ice cream shop, I certainly asked if it was okay to go in front of the threading salon and they liked it. There was people sitting out front eating ice cream and then seeing their threading. So I wouldn't imagine that any business would do that because then you immediately make an enemy of your neighbor and you know that you can't function, that never works out. So, I mean, I obviously can't speak for every single business, but that specific one, I know that they're, in sync about that. And I guess just wanted to make that mention because I have that specific example that I know personally. So, I guess that's it. And if I know John, like I know John, he would allow me to go first because he's a gentleman. So thank you for letting me go first.
Thank you, Courtney. That's a really good point. Advertising comes in different forms. Thank you. John? You're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you, Alita. Okay, so there's a whole host of things that were brought up in the last couple of minutes of discussion, and it's all really important. I think most of it, Michelle, rests on what the guidelines are going to look like. So let's kind of start to the top. I want to address some of the things that Valerie brought up, And I want to kind of trickle that down into kind of the broader view here, which is the face of small business is definitely changed in this city forever. What that looks like and some of the concerns that it's going to bring is for community boards and small business to kind of try to figure out. So a restaurant, as was mentioned by Courtney, cannot take over more space than their frontage. And when they come for inspections, they actually measure that with a measuring stick and make sure that they're 6 inches on both sides as to not infringe on neighbors. Number two is, and Courtney said this as well, a lot of retail businesses in this neighborhood who I speak to as a business owner are kind of happy about the outdoor dining because it does bring an influx of people, especially during nice weather, kind of loitering outside. Now, that also creates a whole host of other issues, right? We have a lot of bad actors. We have a lot of people who haven't put the investment or the time or the upkeep into their outdoor structures. And that's something that I really look forward to coming down from the city. I think it was mentioned earlier in the meeting that the city is thinking about proposing 3 or 4 structures that would be approved structures for restaurants to get involved with. This would be great. If they would have done this earlier, we were looking for that for months in the beginning, just so we know what the guidelines are going to be. What we did is we retrofit a lot of our outdoor dining in order to be able to kind of change gears based on what the guidelines look like at that moment, making sure we didn't have to kind of burn money in the process. Now, Valerie, specifically with regard to outdoor dining and restaurants, I think there's something like 40,000 restaurants in New York City. And it doesn't make them any more important than any other small business, but it's so numerous. You have to address that first. Now, I'll say, being a lifelong New Yorker, the way restaurants goes, the way a lot of other retail businesses go. So whether you're looking at restaurants, supermarkets, technology companies that deal with deliveries, or some of the small mom and pops that are still left in the city, the habits that restaurants are going to be forced to adopt at first are eventually going to trickle down to the others. If we're talking about community building, we have to make sure that the shoe repair guy and the restaurant are both treated equitably and have the same opportunity for success. Now, all that being said, in my humble opinion, I am not very optimistic with the future of small business in the city. It is a very, very expensive proposition. We have a social responsibility. We have to make sure we're paying our staff well. We have to make sure we're keeping up with the guidelines, and we have to make sure we're able to survive. Now, rolling back on the CRT, that's something that would be great. I mean, it's something that really shocked me. I mean, I was so flabbergasted when that came out. But those of us who are still in business are going to have to adapt to the new climate. We have to. I would never open up a 120-seat restaurant right now, which is to say I would never open up the Mansion now. It's just not a good business model. What I would do, however, is open up a smaller restaurant that focuses on takeout and delivery. I would really be focusing on my distribution chain, and I would really be focusing on getting involved with technology. The Mansion restaurant has went from doing, let's say, 40 to 50% of our sales by way of delivery to 70 to 80% on a busy day. And that's not because we tried to do that. That is just the natural flow of business. The outdoor dining, however, can tip that needle just a little bit. Because I think, I mean, you guys remember when I went for my outdoor license, the reason I did that is the community kept asking, why don't you have an outdoor cafe for years? Philip, my father, was adamantly opposed to doing it. He did not want to do it because he knew it would be very difficult and very expensive. But I thought it was a good gesture for the community to know that not only are we staying, but we're trying to provide accommodations that are going to keep your interest, the customer's interest. But I am in agreement with Michelle, and a lot of restaurant people may give me a hard time for this. You have to do it the right way. We can't see rats running around the street. You have to take care of the garbage problem. You have to make sure that you're not encroaching on your neighbors. You can't take up 95% of the walk space. These are all very, very important things. And I think if we do it the right way and the city comes down with the right guidelines, we have a really good shot of kind of making everybody happy with this thing. Parking, I'm right there with you, Michelle. I drive through the city too. Quadruple park cars everywhere. I can't park anywhere in the city. I understand New York is not really designed for that kind of stuff, but when it comes to infrastructural problems, we're going to kind of have to deal with that through a transportation lens, I think. Which is to say, whether it be the restaurant outdoor dining program, or bike lanes, or handicapped accessibility, or loading and unloading zones, it's something that we're going to have to tackle in spite of the restaurant program. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. I just want to mention for those who were not at the meeting when we were talking with the restaurant on East 60th Street who wanted to have an outdoor restaurant shed and couldn't, that it's not only the small businesses that have been treated or that it's been an inequitable situation for. It's not a question of being treated necessarily, but it's also restaurants that can't open an outdoor shed because of a fire hydrant or a bike lane or a bus stop, or that was a corridor to the East 59th Street Bridge. So it's something that we've heard so much from, and not just this community board, but others around Manhattan as well, is the idea of equity for others who can participate in open restaurants and can't be ignored. I'd like to say that I disagree with you, John, and hope that, well, I don't know that we differ in hope, but that small businesses will be able to survive, because that's what I like about visiting other neighborhoods, is seeing what they have in their storefronts, what they're selling, what people are looking at, and it gives a lot of vibrancy, especially when the hours at restaurants are not open. And anyway, let's Kaz has his hand raised, and then John, did you raise your hand again? Okay, so Kaz first, and then you, John. Kaz, go ahead.
Yeah, with regards to the next door, currently you have to get the next door's permission, which, and they can't charge you, which a lot of people have done. However, the new text amendment change forbids expanding next door. You are only allowed to have in front of your place. So that eliminates that. As far as the outdoor structures for businesses, restaurants have people come. So you get 20, 30, however many people come during the day, weekend, at any time, to sit down and occupy the place. For different businesses, you don't get 20 or 30 people come that they don't have the space inside to go in and do their shopping. Do they really need the outdoor space? What would they use it for? To store their equipment, to store their merchandise? So as far as grants, it's got to be equitable financially to everybody. And this is where I think a lot of the inconsistency is. Restaurants were given grants by the federal government, the city, the state, and everything. So if you illegally expanded, you were able to get a bigger grant. If you couldn't have expanded, your wages weren't as high, so you couldn't get the bigger grant. As far as the city with the SBS, they're giving grants of up to 10,000. Your hands are tied for the next 3 or 4 years as far as what you can do, what you have to report, and all the paperwork and everything else. So that should be made easier, but it should be for all different businesses. The grants that should be given on a need basis. With the federal government over the PPP, you get some companies that got millions of dollars. So for every $1 million that was given to one person, it could have helped 10 other small businesses, really small businesses. The structures, it has always been that the structures were supposed to be small, movable structures, 3'6" high, no permanent structures above the 3'6". Now you have every single structure in the world, from tents to palaces that have been built there. So these restaurants have spent thousands of dollars on building these illegal structures on the sidewalk and in the streets. So come September, October, whenever the permanent open restaurants come in, what are they going to do? They're going to have to demolish because they're illegal. So it's been a fiasco from the start as far as definite clearances, definite plans, definite values, definite everything. So come October, everybody's going to have to dismantle these structures. So you have to be fair to all the businesses, and the way that it can be done has got to be financially. If your income for the past year has been less, then you are entitled to more. All these businesses, they've raked in the money for the past 2 years. So, there's a lot of inequality on how the businesses can be compensated for the loss of revenue. That's a discussion for the future and for the Department of Finance in the city and the state. Thanks.
Thank you. I guess not just the Department of Finance, but also in conjunction with the business services. So thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a lot of similarity between what Kaz just said and some of the things you said, Alita. And I just want to be clear about one of those things. I do think small business is going to make it. It's just not going to make it in the form that we're accustomed to today. Everything is going through such a radical change, and small business is definitely one of those things. And so we're definitely going to have small business, neighborhood to neighborhood, and we're going to see exactly where they end up. Now, Kaz brought up something very, very important too, the quote unquote permanent structures. So initially, we built out something that was removable because it makes more sense for us. The city mandated that we build something hardy enough to withstand a car crash at low speed. First, we started with water-filled barricades, and then we eventually used a gravel-filled kind of terrace, so to speak. So yeah, again, guidelines are going to be key here. This is the thing that's going to address all of those issues. And it's also going to really give us a good idea of where small business is going in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's also so important to participate in these public hearings. And I think also we're very lucky that our council member is the chair of the Small Business Committee. And this way we can take a lot of the, we have a lot. One of the great things about the Upper East Side is that there are so many small businesses and small restaurants and local places to eat and buy. And so I think it's really, it'll be an advantage to us to be able to get our opinions to the people who are going to be on the ground actually making these decisions. Because I think it really is going to take a long time to really put together what the final guidelines are going to be. And that really has been an issue from the start. John, you say it absolutely correctly. One day they said, make it as thin as possible. And the next day they said, we're going to come out and measure your barricade. And if it's not 18 inches, we're going to tell you that you can't have an outdoor restaurant. So, nobody was more, had less to work with than the restaurant who wanted to make their business continue. And then every day was, the guy would come out with the ruler and say, your barricade is too short, take it all down. And, everybody who was sitting had to get up and go somewhere else. So, I think that is definitely something that everyone was talking about. And I completely agree. I think, the pandemic is going to be an evolution of how small business is conducted, and I think it's going to be a real mixture of bricks and mortar and delivery and how that's all going to work. And I think it's also clear that somebody has to do some regulation of Uber Eats and Grubhub and all that's going on in terms of the effect that has on the small restaurants and everybody that works in that space. So, if you can participate in that public hearing tomorrow, maybe not for the full 9 hours, but when you listen to the different testimony, I know that one of the things that I heard that I found to be interesting is, and you guys who own the restaurants would know better, like when you size your outdoor eating space, right, you have a kitchen that's made to be able to service the number of people that are in your restaurant. And so for a lot of restaurants now with the outdoor space, if everything was filled, can your kitchen really service that? And one of the things they were talking about in terms of how much space you could take up on the street and the sidewalk is some kind of formula to the size of your kitchen, because your business model, if you were in your space, didn't account for 10 extra tables outside, or in some cases where I am, the outdoor restaurant is, 3 times the size of the original space of the restaurant, indoors. So how can the kitchen really accommodate that? And so they were looking for ways for a formula for that. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I think we can, I don't know if anybody else wants to talk on this topic, but maybe we can.
Well, I wanted to ask generally, and Michelle has her hand raised, if any of the people on the board who have experience with restaurants, you know who you are, or the bids, have suggestions about how to make it an equitable program, not just for small businesses, because that's something different. Their needs are different, whether they want to be outdoors may be different, but for restaurants that are not able to participate in the program, if you have ideas about what could be done so that they stay in business too, because businesses just on the corners or restaurants just on the corners may not be enough or may not be adequate. So I'm just throwing this out there for you guys. And Michelle?
Yeah, so to Valerie's point, if there are concerns about the kitchen being able to accommodate a full interior and a full exterior, that is completely the antithesis of what the program is meant to be. The point of outdoor dining was because they didn't want it with three-sided dining, one side open for fresh air, was to simulate the outdoors, because the thought was the virus didn't spread as much in the outdoors. So if you're talking about a restaurant with a full inside capacity and a full outside capacity, and adjusting the kitchen or taking the kitchen into consideration, that absolutely is not in keeping with the original plan for this program. The plan for this program was outdoor dining, substituting for the indoor dining, or at least being able then, if you have outdoor dining, to be able to space your tables wide enough inside for health safety and yet not lose your capability. So to me, if you're now talking about two full, and I'm walking up and down the avenues, and I am now seeing four-sided structures, because the doors that are added are actual closed, doors that are closed to the weather, doors on hinges that close and open. You now have a complete inside structure without a ventilation system, which most restaurants have. When they put in their kitchen, there are required ventilation systems. It's a big deal. It's a costly deal. Nobody's requiring that in the outdoor sheds, and yet you're talking about them being fully enclosed, and you're talking about them being filled to capacity and the indoor. I mean, to me, you can't have both sides of this issue. If this open restaurant program makes sense, and to me it only makes sense extending it, and John, just to say, I didn't mean to say, if I did say it, that the pandemic is over. I meant that it is diminishing. And restaurants are opening all over the place. Second restaurants are opening. So some people are doing that. The pandemic is diminishing. And I can see extending this program on a 3-month, 4-month, checking on it, see how the pandemic is, then see if you want to extend it again. But this city council went from nothing to everything. The legislation, before putting anything else in place, any construction requirement, any business requirement, any location, any measurement, before putting anything in place, before even examining the situation, they jumped to permanency. And in fact, I have it here. They don't even have a bill. What this is a resolution with no information. It says, we hereby, in essence, paraphrasing, of course, we hereby will vote to decide that this program will be permanent. That's the extent. It's about a page and a half. So that to me is not a comprehensive bill that anybody could seriously consider. And I have been to meetings where the DOT has been there because they're apparently becoming a lead agency. And we asked them 1,000 questions. They did not have the answer to one of them. Not that they were not going to consider all of those questions. Yes, they were going to consider them. But at this moment in time, the answers were, yes, we're going to take care of that, but we haven't done that yet. Or we haven't looked into that yet. Or we have a team that's going to look into it. Or we're considering that. Do you see what I mean? So there's nothing really in place. And to me, unless there's something in place, you don't know what you're voting on. But now you're telling me that they're planning for capacity indoor and out, and you're still telling me that this is necessary because of the pandemic. Those are two contrary statements, and I'm concerned about that.
Well,
As
no,
to the other,
okay, I think you miss, all I'm saying is when one restaurant gets so many square footage, gets a huge amount of square footage outside, people were trying to figure out how much they should be entitled to have to try to get some equity in terms of outdoor space. And so one of the proposals was to look at it that way. I'm not saying that that's the way they're going, but you know.
No, Valerie, I know you were only commenting on what was commented on. You weren't inventing the program or proposing it. I get that. But I'm just saying, if that's under consideration, it's the antithesis of what the original proposal of the program was, because you're not supposed to have capacity indoors. That's why you're getting outdoors.
Right.
And
well, I mean,
you know what I mean? So it's for them to discuss. It's not for you to answer. You know what I'm saying? I'm not asking you to defend anything. I know you're just reporting.
That's the premise. I think that's the premise, though, of the permanent program, is that people want, to John's earlier point, there's a clamoring in the city for more outdoor dining. And so,
but this is a little extreme. This is not outdoor dining. And we have a program for outdoor dining. And if you want, in the zoning resolution, and if you wanted to extend that, expand on it, tweak that, that's perfectly fine. This is none of that.
Okay,
this
well,
is different.
I expect to hear you at the public hearing tomorrow.
And you will.
I think you will. We have.
I don't know. Well, I get it. So let's I don't know if anybody wants to. I mean, we're going to double back to some people who've already spoken. Rob, do you
but there's someone from the public who hasn't spoken yet. Rob, do you mind waiting since you have spoken? Thank you. To Baz Galil.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I will make it very short.
Yes,
so first of all, I really like what I heard from John Phillips. Basically, my opinion is there are like three main pieces of the puzzle. The first piece is that restaurants and business owners should have a direct channel to the decision makers. Okay, I mean to whoever who make decisions. So in order for them to survive, and I think that eventually the outcome of it will be deregulation. Deregulation, I mean, letting John come with his car and parking it in a place where someone is not allowed to park. I mean, helping them out as much as they can. And second is to basically to help them, to bring them additional money because of, because of the COVID-19, they had additional issues surviving and the inflation and so on. The second part of the puzzle is, I think that it's a lot depends. Second part and third part is a lot depends on if this is the new normal or we are going to see things back to normal, meaning that if offices will open again, that's one, and second, if tourists will come again. If this is the new normal, where knowledge workers can work from wherever they want, lawyers this, then the city, good luck. Good luck to New York City. But yeah, and just last comment, what John was saying between the lines, he was saying that some businesses will not survive regardless of what will happen because things are now changing. I mean, it's unbelievable what's happening, and we need to hear from people like John about what he thinks about how the future will be, and to basically help the city to position to be prepared for the future. That's all from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Alita. I'll go very fast because I have spoken already.
No, that's okay. You were patient. Take what.
No. no. I'm your guest, so I'm appreciative of that. First of all, the points I mostly wanted to speak up because the last time I objected to Michelle, and this time I have to agree 100%. Business restaurants in this case, but let's say all businesses that aren't in a aren't positioned in the right place are at a distinct disadvantage, and there needs to be some kind of accommodation. I will be testifying in writing. I just took a week and a half off to go to Colorado for a belated Christmas, so I don't have time to sit on, a city council Zoom call for 9 hours waiting to testify. But I will be submitting written testimony that basically will support continuing an open restaurant program, but definitely noting that there needs to be some modifications, including being fair to all businesses that have positioning problems that don't allow them to participate. Look, I walk past probably twice a week. I walk past Fresco by Scotto over on 52nd Street, I think, which is, I know, see, that's going to be CB5's problem, but that is a case where the entire sidewalk is taken over by the restaurant, and it's beautiful. But the fact is, if you're trying to walk through, and thank God I'm not in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller or anything, it's impossible. So, this stuff there needs to be, you're absolutely right. There needs to be responsiveness and responsibility by the restaurants and any business actually that's out there. So that's all I really want to say. I think that we can accommodate all businesses. We can accommodate responsible restaurateurs out there. And we can, at least in the short term, because anything government does can always be undone. We can always we can meet the needs that we have right now, and perhaps for the next few years while we are waiting out while we're all getting immune to the virus, I hope. That's it. I think there's a middle ground, in other words, and I think that's what we need to aim for. So thank you.
I just want to mention, I think, Rob, you had said something about earlier businesses selling their wares or merchandise out on the street. And I know that you worked with Art on the Ave to put art in storefronts. I don't know if I haven't seen it yet, if they're vacant, but I have seen other things that they've installed in other parts of Manhattan. And it's a way for people, it's almost like having things out on the street. It's a way for people to appreciate if the stores are occupied, what's there. And even though you're in another board, whether it's 6 or 5, it I hate to use the expression, bleeds into CB8. We're only separated by a few feet across a side street, but it's an opportunity for people to see what's going on in other stores and other neighborhoods. And so I'm just kind of bringing that out because it's worth it.
Alita, thank you for mentioning that, because I got it from you and your art committee. Yes, and we did not get up to 8, but we have 4. We had 4 or 5 locations in between community boards 5 and 6. And fortunately, one's already been rented. So please look at eastmidtown.org and come visit us. We have gallery walks, by the way, on Thursday and on March 10th. Sorry, that's not the small business thing, but
it is in the sense. It is, I'm sorry for interrupting you. It is in the sense that Barbara had mentioned to me with respect, I think, to Columbus Avenue, that there were occupied stores that were interested in showing things in their windows too. It brought people to their windows. People saw what they were selling. It made their storefronts more interesting, I think, to passersby. And so that's why I bring it up, because it is for small businesses, not just for landlords, large or small, that do this. I don't know who they are, but also for small businesses that are adjacent to them or that have art displayed in their windows. It's just a really interesting, I think, an effective concept for bringing people into different areas. So, bully for you, as they used to say, for working with Barbara on that. Thank you.
We're going to do it again. Thank
you,
though.
Good.
And thank you
Courtney?
for giving us, yeah, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. It's something that I'll put my arts committee hat on. It's something that we're trying to do in parts of CB8. So stay tuned. Thank you, Rob. Courtney?
So anyone that knows me knows that sometimes when I start talking, I talk too much. So just stop me if I go a little too long. But I just wanted to say this, and I know that I've said this before. I know John and I have had this conversation millions of times. But when it comes down to a successful business, it definitely comes down to the human being running it, right? In bars and restaurants, it is such an anomaly. It's always, it's like this double-edged sword. You have chefs that can make an amazing meal and they are so passionate about what they do. So they want to open up their own restaurant, right? Because they're passionate about food and they're passionate about feeding you and they, love the ingredients and love this, that, and the other. But the truth is owning a restaurant, there's like little to no cooking, right? You are running a business, which is very, very different than, putting something beautiful on a plate. The same thing goes for bars. Somebody that wants to, I know everybody I know wants to own a bar. They want to own a bar because they love bars. They love going to bars. They love to drink. They love to do this, that, and the other. But the truth is that it comes down to the human behind it. And I can tell you that I am you could say successful bar owner, probably because I don't drink, probably because I refuse to drink in my property, probably because I refuse to let anybody drink. You hear all these businesses that have these problems with, the SLA, but it's very easy to not have these problems if you follow the rules ferociously. And so, you can see everyone hates me on the internet because nobody can ever get into my property unless they have a physical ID, these types of things where, other bars make these mistakes, they make these exceptions, and then they get in trouble with these certain agencies. And they have like these best intentions, but you have to be a seriously organized person, right? When I was in Vegas, I was a consultant. I was hired to do just that, to be a cleaner, to go into clubs and to go into lounges and fix all the things that they were doing wrong. And it's always the same things that a lot of these places are doing wrong. They're not organized. They're not on top of things. They're not answering the emails. They're not submitting the paperwork by the time that they're supposed to. And I did that for a really long time in my career. And that's what ended me owning my own company. Because I didn't want to consult anymore. And, I would get paid to open up a place and then, go on to the next. And I swore I wasn't going to do it again. But in keeping with everything we're discussing, everybody knows the answers. It's like people need help. These humans need help opening these establishments. And it's like, where do you begin? Because yes, it is so many revolving pieces, so many companies, you can get dinged with anybody, anything. You have to reach out to this person. Like right now I'm in hell with my contractor, and that's just one beast of a thing. And then of course, as soon as you open your doors, who wants to sue me because I have stairs at the front that, has a wheelchair? Who wants to sue me for this? Who's gonna this? Who's gonna that? Like it's, as soon as you open the doors, you're just like, baiting away all these fires. And so I was approached to open up a UES in Florida, right? This was something that had been pulled, and I was very adamant about opening up a second property on the Upper East Side because you guys know I'm an actual Upper East Sider. This is my own neighborhood, and I've seen it. I know exactly what's gone on to it. I've been on 89th Street for 15 years. Like I know what's happening, and I didn't want to leave like a lot of people did because I felt, I felt my own loyalty. Like this is my neighborhood. This is where I live. I don't want to just throw in the towel and give up like, some people did. So I'm opening the second place. And then it became about a gentleman had approached me. He lives in the 70s and Eats closed that corner space. And he had asked me if I would open something in the 70s. And I've been approached that a few times, so much so that I now feel like, my company, the Bond Group, was about hospitality and opening up properties. But I think that I'm going to get into, I want to get my contracting license so that I can be a GC and have a design and build. So that way I can do these things from the ground up and then be a consultant. And I feel like that's what we need. And then if I'm on the board or with partnering with the board, then you need to point them in the direction of a real seasoned consultant. It's not just a consultant that wants to take your money, but somebody that knows every single step. I know them now. I mean, I have an organized book, an A to Z, exactly what you need to do when you first approach. And I think there's a way that we can tie, because you guys are the very first step when somebody wants to open something. I think maybe there's some way to tie in some requirements, whether it's a pre-inspection for either SLA or health department or something else, maybe you guys would require to just help them, or some sort of thing, some sort of book. Like it can't just be John or I or somebody that knows, because it's our time. Like I'm literally working right now designing. I'm going to get off here. I'm going to be working all night. I'm going to be back at 6 a.m. to meet my contractors. He's working. He's at his own restaurant right now working like we're working. We can't pull away time just to do that. We, out of the, the generosity. We'd love to. We would love to. He'd love to help people. I would love to help people. I definitely help as much as possible, but it has to be a real business where you hire somebody that knows this language. You do have to be able to multitask. You have to be able to send 10 emails to Con Ed, to everybody else that you need to send, and stay on top of them, stay abreast. If they didn't follow up with you, you have to email again. You have to email again. You can't just wait around for them. You have to be, like I said, you have to be ferocious with these organizations if you really want to get something done and be open. And then it comes down to the human. Like, I wasn't a drinker, I was a nerd in school. Like, I liked extra credit. Like, that's who I was. That's the only reason why, maybe I don't mind dealing with us. I don't have a lot of the problems that they do because I stay on top of this. But I can say it's not only is it exhausting, but it's a 25-hour-a-day type of operation. So I feel like I just wanted to say that because that's something now I want to go in the direction of, is I want to open up a third property on the Upper East Side. I have the concept of it, something I was going to open downtown, but now, like I said, the same reason why I opened UES on the Upper East Side instead of taking it to Meatpacking where it originally was going to go was because we didn't have a cocktail bar. We didn't have ice cream in my neighborhood. And now there's ice cream everywhere. And that's fantastic. And now we need more cocktail bars. The reason why I'm opening up this second place is because people wanted a place to dance and have like a good time. They try at UES, but it's not really the place for it. The only kind of place to dance on the Upper East Side is Ethel's. And this place works out because it's a basement. So you're not upsetting anybody. The deli's upstairs and he's very excited about me coming there. I'm not upsetting any tenants because I can't play music loud here because I do have tenants above me. And like I said, you don't want to make, enemies with your neighbors, but once you know your neighborhood and once you know what they need, then you need to open it up. And that's what I want to do, is open up another cocktail bar on the Upper East Side because people all love, my place for cocktails. We used to have, Infirmary, we used to have a couple other cocktail bars, but now we don't really have them. So now there's a need for it. So I don't know. I guess I just wanted to say that that's where the direction I'm heading as professionally is a design and build consulting type of firm so that I could tie in with you guys and maybe you connect them with me once I'm doing something like that and give them a real A to Z, like I said, or if maybe it's something I sell that tells them exactly, this is the email that you need to write. This is the person that you need to write to. This is who you need to X, Y, and Z to kind of get where it is. But that's our information and experience that's taken, 25 plus years to kind of hone in. I mean, like I said, it's very heartbreaking when you find someone that's really passionate about food and wants to open up an amazing restaurant. They come from other countries, they want to open up something, but they don't realize what's ahead of them. It's got nothing to do with cooking. You're no longer cooking anything. You are, you have to be a machine. You have to be a machine to run a business and to survive a business in New York City, because the second, like I said, you open your doors, it's just nothing but bullets flying at you. So
Courtney, obviously you have tons of experience and tons of knowledge, and you're successfully running one business and opening two, and you've get asked a lot to do that. Maybe it's possible, maybe with help from other board members or not, to compile kind of a list, like a go-to, something that we could post that give people at least a sketch of what to do, so that they're not just floundering around. People don't necessarily know who is experienced or what they know. So if you could do something like that, and we could provide more information for the public on our website.
Or maybe one night we have a special meeting where we have a panel of business people from the Upper East Side talking about, how they've been in business so long, and give maybe people who are thinking about entering into a small business just some,
or it could be specifically for restaurants even.
Experience. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can have two different panels.
I think that's a great idea, Valerie.
All right. I think on that note, unless there's something...
John has his hand raised, so maybe
sorry, I didn't see it. Apologies.
Thanks. Nope, that's okay. Well, I'm speaking for John here, so I'll stop. John?
No, thank you, Alita. No, just very quickly, I mean, because it's relevant to almost everything we spoke about. And I think at the core of what Courtney was saying is, a lot of restaurants end up becoming bad actors because either A, they don't know, or two, they're too inundated with their day-to-day. Of course, you have those who are breaking rules wittingly and knowingly because it's easier or lucrative. I don't think that represents a large portion of the industry. That being said, when it comes to a lot of Michelle's concerns, which are all very valid and to a degree my concern as well, when you have the guidelines coming down for the outdoor dining program, which I also think, started as COVID and now it's a quality of life issue and things that I think New Yorkers want, their behavior is going to directly impact my ability to do what I'd like to do. And so I have kind of a dog in that fight. I want to make sure everybody who's engaging with the outdoor dining program is doing it according to the guideline and not upsetting the neighborhood and the community boards across the city. So in that way, it may be very, very useful to have this kind of undergirding purpose for the Small Business Council to provide, disseminate, and help people stay up to date with the guidelines and stay within compliance as well.
Okay.
So we need to figure out how to get that information to the people who are new in the field or more experienced and yet are not able to comply fully, and for people just starting out, as Courtney was so passionately and eloquently saying. So I think maybe we could do something that Valerie was suggesting and have a panel discussion followed by, or have a panel followed by a roundtable kind of discussions, so that we could help people get on their feet. That's our function. That's your function as on the board, and it's our neighborhood function to encourage people to patronize and open businesses that help us all thrive. And as the commissioner mentioned, be safe on our streets as well. I just want to mention, oh, I'm sorry, Valerie, can I just mention one quick thing? Is that I was notified by text that I wasn't really clear. The reason I brought up the whole art on the app program with the partnership, Rob Burns's bid, E60s, is that it's a way, it's a creative way of promoting neighborhoods and promoting businesses. And that's what we need to do is think creatively. And that was one of the things I had wanted to talk to the Small Business Services about, is that not just fines, which are essential, but also creative ways of helping small businesses, either through working with big businesses or consultants or something, so that businesses have a lot of resources, and there are resources devoted to helping businesses thrive, which takes creative thinking. It's not just fine limitations, but it's really helping them appeal to a broader audience. And that's the reason I brought up the whole art thing, not related to the small businesses, was that it's a creative way of promoting. And that's why I was encouraging people to walk around and look in the windows and see other neighborhoods and see our neighborhoods and help and shop local. And maybe a program for encouraging people to shop local is something that we could work on as well.
Yeah.
Valerie.
Well, no, I was just going to say, to John's point, now that we know that there are all these committees meeting and there's going to be these regulations coming through, there's going to be a very long commentary period. And I think that the Small Business Commissioner alluded to the fact that at some point they're going to come back and talk about what these regs are. And I think it'll be important for us to keep following that. And this way we can get input from everybody as to what needs to be in there and what isn't going to work. So, well, we'll just keep track, and we really appreciate everybody's commentary tonight and for the lively discussion regarding the whole situation. Best of luck to Courtney with her contractor tomorrow, and for all of you out there who are working on their businesses and keeping New York City alive, and keeping it as vital as it can be. And we really appreciate that. And thanks for everyone, I think, for joining us. I don't know if there's any other business. So if somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn, I'll accept that.
And I'll assume, since no one's raised their hands and Valerie says no old business, no new business, there isn't any. So is there, or cause, I guess cause is a motion to adjourn, Michelle seconding. So why don't we say adjourned? We'll see you shortly and continue these
Happy
discussions.
Valentine's Day to everybody.
And stay on the call.
Keep somewhere local.
Get your sleep tonight. Get your stamina ready for that hearing tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Bye-bye.
Bye.